Climate change has gotten so bad that you could take a spinning globe and throw a dart at that globe, and wherever that dart lands, you could write a whole book about the conspicuous climate impacts right in that one little microdot, wherever it is in the world. And the reason I know that is because I've done it right here in my neighborhood on the 7100 block of Willow Avenue. My name's Mike Tidwell. I live here in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I've lived here for the last 34 years. This is an old trolley neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Washington begins at the end of this block. This is my 100-year-old home behind me. And until recently, we had really big 150-year-old trees throughout this neighborhood. They have been dying in recent years, which prompted me to write the book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, a story of climate and hope on one American street, where I talk about the impacts of climate change throughout this neighborhood. But also there's hopefulness. At the same time that we've seen the passing of trees, we've seen the coming of clean energy. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk you around my block and tell this story so you can see what I write about in my book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue. I wanna show you right across the street from my house. We have big gaps in our tree canopy throughout this town. You can see right here, there's just a big opening. And if you had taken this shot 3 years ago, you would have seen a massive tree right here where this garden is. And you would have seen behind that house another really big tree, a 150-year-old tree. Those are just two examples of trees that have disappeared just in the last 2 years in this neighborhood. And in Tacoma Park, one of two things happen when our big trees come down. Either solar panels go up because somebody's roof is suddenly sunny, or gardens happen. So my neighbor Dorothy and I planted a garden. We've got some winter rye coming in, we got garlic right there. That is exactly where an 80-year-old oak tree was standing barely 2 years ago. But this is our neighborhood. At first glance, seems normal. You look around closer and you see a urban ecology in decline. I'm now in the backyard of one of my neighbors on Willow Avenue, and you can see the remains of this tree. This is a 150-year-old southern red oak that passed away in 2021. Like so many oak trees in my neighborhood, and that's because in 2018, Maryland and every other mid-Atlantic state got, by a long shot, record annual rainfall. Maryland got 2 feet more rain than normal. And what happened was there was a dip in the jet stream related to climate change. A warming Arctic means we have an erratic jet stream of wind in North America. That jet stream went all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and brought moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and dumped it on the mid-Atlantic. And that rainfall just soaked the ground for so long in 2018, it triggered a mold in the soil called Phytophthora, which translates from Greek to plant destroyer. And that mold devastated the roots of thousands and thousands of big trees in this region, including this one. Born in the 1870s, outlived World War I, Teddy Roosevelt, the Great Depression, Vietnam War, the dawn of smartphones, killed by rotten roots, which stressed the tree so much when it tried to leaf out in 2019, it became vulnerable to ambrosia beetles. It was ultimately ambrosia beetles that killed a lot of the trees in this neighborhood. This one was able to beat back the beetles, but it just was devastated by the multiple impacts of climate change, insects, and now it's gone. Here in Willow Avenue, we still have a lot of trees, especially willow oaks, which are more tolerant of rainfall, heavy rain that we've been getting lately. But the real story of this neighborhood is that huge gap right there in our canopy, in the backyards of the homes on the northwestern side of Willow Avenue. That's where we've lost 500 years worth of tree growth just since 2019. That is where biggest focus of our sadness is. We're rooting for other trees to keep living on this block, but we have just lost so much. The other thing is oak trees are evolved to host more life forms than any other tree genus in North America. So that Miller tree, for example, hosted 500 to 1,000 forms of life. Oak trees are keystone species in any urban or rural neighborhood. So that gap of oak trees that have died has transformed the urban ecology of our neighborhood.
How would you describe how climate change is actually affecting people's lives, like with the tick bites, the Lyme's disease?
Lyme disease is a serious problem in Tacoma Park and throughout much of Maryland. Maryland's one of the worst states in the country with Lyme. I was bit by a tick in 2008. I was in my backyard. I was misdiagnosed for 6 years. It took till 2014 that I was actually diagnosed. And as a result, I, to this day, manage a condition of chronic Lyme disease. Periodically, I have to take antibiotics. I take herbal remedies. But as I was writing this book, I started asking around, well, who else has had Lyme?
Today, how many people in the room have had Lyme disease or have Lyme disease?
Wow.
Yeah.
How many people in this room have lost a tree in your yard or on your block? Raise your hand. Oh my God. When a tree dies in a national forest, it's just a number, it's a stat. But when it dies in someone's backyard, it's a friend. And so families like the Miller family here on Willow Avenue and throughout this neighborhood, they're all grieving these friends, these trees that they lived with for decades. And it's almost like we have this graveyard with these trunks being tombstones that we walk past, that we see every day, and we remember the passing of a great friend. We also know that being near big trees improves human health. It boosts our immune system. Our stress levels go down when we're near big trees. Our cortisol levels go down. There are studies that show that patients in hospital rooms who can see a tree through a window recover faster than patients who can't see a tree through the window. We know this concept of forest bathing from Japan, this sense of well-being that comes from being around trees. The question I ask in my book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, is as we lose these trees, especially these big canopy giants, what does that do for our health? We need to save the big trees we have, because in doing so, we're saving ourselves. This is a willow oak, 150 years old, that died not from rain, not from beetles, but from a tremendous windstorm that we had in July 2023. Again, extreme weather. So here next to the tragically fallen 150-year-old willow oak is a statue of St. Francis, the patron saint of the environment and animals. And miraculously, the tree just crumbled in many pieces around St. Francis and did not disturb St. Francis. So in the neighborhood, we consider this the St. Francis miracle. Here you can see another casualty of the extreme weather. This also was a southern red oak right here. It died in 2021. You know, it used to shade this whole corner of the block. There's my church right across the street. We would come out of church and just see this miraculous tree. In 2020, we had a storm so bad in Tacoma Park. We got 5 inches of rain in 1 hour, and the water just overwhelmed this city. It flooded the boiler room of my church. Water leaked into the preschool, and the church leaders went to the city and said, you have to do something about this. We can't ever have our basements being flooded like this, especially since we have a preschool. And the city said, we're broke, we don't have money for flooding, but we do have sidewalk money. So the city, trying to adapt to climate change, wound up spending $45,000, busted up the sidewalk, brought in 20 tons of soil, elevated almost half a block of sidewalk. The sidewalk used to be down here, and now it's been elevated 14 inches. That might seem subtle to many people. If you don't know what you're looking at, you wouldn't notice it. This is a flood levee to keep water out of the church. Part of the problem, according to the city, is that not only are the storms getting bigger, but because we've lost so many trees, it complicates the problem. We have cascading impacts of climate change right on this block, because first we get the heavy rains of 2018, which damaged the roots of the trees and caused these many trees to die. But now we get these strong precipitation events, and the trees aren't there to absorb the rain. The roots, which normally would absorb a lot of the rain, and the canopies, the leaves that would slow the rain down and provide that ecosystem service of flood prevention and mitigation, are no longer there. Because if you had taken this shot 5 years ago, there would have been a massive 150-year-old willow oak in this frame, a 100-year-old white oak, an 80-year-old willow oak, and a 150-year-old red oak in the background there. All of those trees used to absorb flood water. They used to keep water from flooding into the church, and now they're gone. In one block, we have this microcosm of climate change. You heat the planet, you cause more rain, it kills trees, the disappearing trees compound the flooding problem, and then taxpayers have to pay for creative solutions just trying to keep up with these extreme events. So again, we've almost completed the tour around this square block. This is the Lawson Feasley house at the corner of Willow and Tulip. If you'd taken this shot 5 years ago, you would have barely been able to see the house. There were so many old oak trees all around it, a real kind of urban forest around it. You could see it's a house now just completely flooded with sunlight. If you go a little bit further though, the title of my book is The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, a story of climate and hope on one American street. This is part of the hope that we feel. This is an amazing post oak. It's easily 150 years old. It's a tree that's adapted to both extreme floods and extreme droughts, and it seems to be in really good health. It's just a miracle of a tree. I'm now at my office in Tacoma Park. This is half a block from my house. This is the 7th floor of an office building. What's interesting is we can see from the neighborhood from the air. You can look right here and there's just lots of solar panels. There's solar panels on this roof right here. If you look over here, that's a brand new apartment building there in the distance. And on the top are things called heat pumps. They're compressors that both heat and cool the building. That building is fully electric. There's no gas burn for hot water or furnace. The stoves are electric. The heating and cooling of air space is all from electricity. And this is what we've seen all around this neighborhood. Solar panels, electric buildings. So that's the hope part, the coming of clean energy, even as we see changes on the ground in terms of falling trees, flooding, and Lyme disease. My organization, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we push for clean energy solutions to climate change in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. And from this office, you can see Maryland, DC, and Virginia in the distance, and we can see the product of our clean energy advocacy literally on the roofs around us. Often people ask me, tell me one thing that I can do. Please don't give me 10 things. You freak me out about climate change. You've convinced me there's an emergency. And my answer is always the same. Develop a relationship with one group, one organization fighting climate change wherever you live. Donate money if you can. go on their website, sign up for their email alert list. If you sign up for the email alert list for Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we're going to tell you when there's a vote in the State House. We're going to tell you when there's a rally. We're going to alert you to when the City Council is about to take on a climate issue. That's how you develop a relationship with a group, and that's what I encourage people to do. Are you still hopeful?
I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. The younger generations especially take the problem of climate change very seriously and very personally. I feel very hopeful we're going to be able to save democracy and the climate and humanity in that order. So yeah.
You know, there's reason to be very concerned and alarmed about the current administration in Washington, but the reality is no single president or Congress can stop the clean energy revolution. All over the world, every day, human beings deploy 1 gigawatt of solar power every day. That's the equivalent of a nuclear power plant of solar every single day. Half of all the cars sold in China this year, the largest auto market in the world, will be electric cars. The world is moving on. We can solve this problem. We just have to go faster and together as a group in relationship with activist groups on climate change, we can make for a better planet where both we and our big trees can grow old together.